The German government has approved a plan to bolster its army by bringing in voluntary military service. It could even bring back conscription if not enough people join. The move comes as Europe continues to adjust to the war in Ukraine. Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Now, Germany says it must prepare for new threats after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But with Donald Trump pushing Europe to defend itself, Berlin's decision is also about America. So, can Europe really stand on its own when it comes to defense?
Germany wants more people in the military, and a new plan has been agreed by its cabinet to introduce voluntary military service. If too few people step forward, conscription could be implemented. Under the plan, all 18-year-old men will need to fill out an online form about their fitness to serve. For women, the choice will remain optional. Chancellor Friedrich Merz says Germany cannot ignore the danger from Moscow following the outbreak of the war in Ukraine.
Russia is and will remain the greatest threat to freedom, peace and stability in Europe for a long time to come, and the German government is responding to this with determination.
But it is an ambitious target. The Bundeswehr wants to expand from 182,000 soldiers today to 260,000 within the next decade. It also hopes to double the number of reservists. That would put Germany at the top of Europe's defense forces.
We don't just need a well-equipped force. We are already well on the way there. We've been doing this for 2.5 years and will not stop. But we also need a Bundeswehr that is strong in terms of personnel. Only then will deterrence as a whole be truly credible vis-à-vis Russia.
But not everyone in Germany agrees. The far-right AfD says the plan is dangerous and irresponsible, accusing the government of reckless militarization. While supporting a return to draft, AfD leader Alice Weidel says Germany must not act as a slave to the US or be pushed into wars. Mainstream parties warn that reviving mandatory service could stir public unease and protests. Following World War II, Germany was demilitarized and the Bundeswehr was only founded in 1955 under strict rules and limits, making today's expansion historic and controversial. With the war in Ukraine continuing, Germany faces mounting pressure from NATO allies and its own security concerns. But as Berlin pushes ahead, will Germans answer the call?
Well, let's bring in our guests. Here with me in the studio, I'm delighted to say we've Sean Bell. Sean is a military analyst and a retired Air Vice Marshal. And Christina Easton, she is Assistant Professor in the Ethics of Non-Violence at the University of Birmingham. In Munich, we have Walter Michel. He is Professor of Public Law at the University of the Bundeswehr, Munich. And joining us from Berlin, we have Quentin Gardner, Secretary General of the Student Council. You're all very welcome to this roundtable. To you first, Quentin, just give us the German view here. How are people feeling about all of this?
I think the first question we have to ask is, how are young people feeling about this? Because they're the ones who have to serve their country and who are called to serve in the military. And I think I can speak for millions of students that feel left out and that feel insecure about the future because we have a government that wants to decide something over heads of millions of people without letting us participate. So we would have wanted to participate in the making of this law, and we haven't. And this is something that is unacceptable in a democratic country.
So, Quentin, just briefly, you're feeling left out of the whole discussion.
Exactly. We are the ones who have to serve this country, right? We are the ones who have to defend it. So you should speak with us and respect us. And that's not what's happening currently. We're being left out in the whole process. And then there's a sort of service mentality based from the German government, just saying, okay, please do something for us, but they haven't done anything in favor of us. So I'm always advocating for better education, for more attention for the topics of young people. So defense of a country doesn't just start by people walking through the mud in the military. It starts with resilient people who want to fight for their country. And if you don't have resilient young people, you won't manage to have a good defense. And we're not investing in education. We're not facing the troubles young people are currently having. We're just saying, please go to the military and fight for your country. And this is not the correct way to do it.
Walter, I'll come to you next. Is Quentin right?
Well, I think he is right. This is a very, very short-term legislative process. And I think people in Berlin are very nervous because there's this NATO planning that says Russia would be able to attack a NATO country in 2029. And we are very far from being ready to defend ourselves against that. We have too few troops, we have not enough personnel, much too much overhead in the Bundeswehr, so too much administration, too few boots on the ground. And of course, it would be much better to have a discussion process in the whole of society, and especially with young people. But I think the governments are work under the assumption that this is not possible in the time frame we're given.
Thank you, Walter. Christina, come in on this. What do you think of Germany's expansion and, as Quentin points out, the emphasis on young people?
So I think that first we should recognise that any additional recruitment into the military is something that we should experience at least some regret about, that when we sign up to the military, that involves taking on considerable burdens. Obviously, we all recognise that that's it exposes you to more physical and psychological risk, but something that I've emphasised in my own research, including with Jonathan Parry at the LSE, is that it also involves taking on considerable moral risk. So when you become a soldier, you not only take on the risk of being killed, but the risk of becoming a killer. And that actually makes people worse off in that respect as well. So any increase in numbers to the military is something to be regretted. However, I should emphasise that doesn't mean that it's all things considered unjustified. So it might be something that we should be concerned about, that we should, of course, be raising moral concerns about. But I also recognise this point about needing boots on the ground. And so it may be that despite the various moral concerns we might have, that it's all things considered justified.
Thanks, Christina. Sean, to you, I'm guessing the whole Ukraine war situation has really sharpened people's minds in Germany.
Yes, I mean, I wouldn't want to speak for the German people, but the whole issue of conscription is something that over the years has been incredibly emotive. I think in peacetime, I mean, let's be clear, I've spent 30 years in the military. Nobody joins the military to die. They don't join the military to go to war. They recognise that the best form of repelling a war is to actually be a credible deterrent. And the challenge at the moment is Germany is not at war, Europe is not at war, and therefore the challenge, I think, is how do you create that deterrence value? How do you bring a number of people in? And one of the things about modern militaries is they tend to have quite small serving armies, but you want to have large bodies of reservists who are trained and ready, and God forbid the day comes where you have to draw on them. If you don't have those reservists that have the right training, you end up as Ukraine does, where we in the UK have been training 30 or 40,000 of their ground troops. We give them 2 or 3 weeks training and send them off to war. That is a travesty. That is not the way to train for war. I understand how emotive it is, but if you're facing a war of national survival, it is one of the ways of getting quantity, even though the serving military are not very big fans of it.
So the German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, has said, we want to be able to defend ourselves so we don't have to defend ourselves. It's very much, if you want peace, prepare for war. Is that what he's saying?
Exactly right. Yes. I mean, we've always said that if you expose vulnerability, you will be capitalized upon. Ukraine was not ready for the invasion of Russia. Russia, therefore, saw an opportunity. And Europe, quite frankly, after 35 years of wars of choice, has considerably underinvested. Germany particularly used to be a powerhouse, but obviously there's a post-Second World War dynamic going on there. But all of a sudden, I go to Ukraine fairly regularly. I'm there later on this month. You go to Poland, they're feeling the heat of Ukraine a lot more than we are here in the UK. And I think Germany in the same sort of way, incredibly emotive, but ultimately preparation is the best form of deterrence. Nobody wants to go to war. Preparing for it is the best way to avert it.
Thanks, Sean. Quentin, back to you. Just talk to me about how the situation in Ukraine is and has affected German thinking the last few years.
A lot, to be honest. Having this war in the heart of Europe is has changed the mentality, and I think Germany was on the way to just say, okay, we're going to solve this diplomatically. We try to keep our relations to Russia up, and we have to acknowledge that this was the wrong path to choose. And now there's a new mentality in Germany that we have to have a military that's able to defend itself, and I have to absolutely agree. This is probably what we are needing. But what I have to emphasize is that the critical infrastructure we have to support. That is us. That is us young peoples, us young Germans, that in the end of the day have to defend this country. And this is not what happened. But that's not what happens. We are not structurally supported by this government. The only thing they're doing is telling us, when you're 18, please go to the military and serve your country. And this is the wrong approach. We are the critical infrastructure. Please invest in us.
Walter, how much of this, as a result of President Trump's interference, if you like, in European security and defense, and pointing out that America needs Europe to stop freeloading, how much of this decision by Germany is to do with Trump?
I think a lot, because Chancellor Merz said before taking office that we cannot rely on the United States anymore, at least not the way we used to rely on the United States. We have to be able to stand on our own 2 feet. So we have to get ready as the largest economy in Europe to take the lead in Europe, to be able to provide defense for the whole continent, and especially for our own country, because we cannot be sure that the United States will be there for us, that the United States will be the leading Western nation feeling responsible for the security of the whole West. So Europe needs to take the lead here.
Thank you, Walter. Christina, I've read that there are increases every month now in the number of Germans who are registering as conscientious objectors, that they simply don't want anything to do with this.
Yes, it seems essential that if conscription is introduced, that a conscientious objection clause is retained. It's very worrying for people to be forced to give up their freedom of occupation and for conscientious objections not to be taken into account. The worry is that. So one of the kind of moral benefits of conscription over an all-volunteer force is that it more evenly distributes the risks and burdens of participating in the military. However, it seems like some more privileged groups are more likely to take advantage of the conscientious objection clause or to appeal for medical exemptions. So that could then be one problem with allowing for exemptions.
Sean just wants to come in on that.
Yeah, just because I think it's a really, really interesting point that I think ultimately they talk about what's your nationality, and it's not a travel document. It's a sense of identity. You enjoy the benefits that you enjoy in a nation, whether it's Germany, whether it's the UK, wherever it is, and you pay for some of those benefits, you live within the laws. But actually, if that lifestyle is threatened, then you need to be able to be prepared to step up. And I think what's fascinating about the conscientious objector thing, in Ukraine, there are a number of people who've been conscientious objectors who have left Ukraine. But that's left a profound question for those families, those people who have remained to fight. Will they welcome those people back to their country again once the peace has been secured? Because ultimately, they are laying down their lives to secure the freedoms and the future for their democracy, for their people, their cultures, their language, their families. Why shouldn't that be a nationhood thing? And I do respect the fact that from a conscientious objector perspective, but in Ukraine, some people have just fled. I do think there's lots of roles. You don't necessarily need to be carrying a gun to be absolutely part of that effort, but it is a sense of national identity and it is a sense of national survival. That's what we're talking about here.
Sean, can I just ask you as well, how do military leaders feel about volunteers coming into the military, people who have had to fill in these government surveys and then suddenly are reservists, whether they like it or not? Are modern young people ready for military life?
Well, there are two questions there, one of which is nearly every military guy I know does not favour conscription. because whether it's 1 year, 6 months, 2 years, there's a huge investment of training and you get no return of investment for it within the military. Most of these people are not that well motivated. They see out their time and you have to have loads and loads of trainers. What it does do is it generates a huge body of reservists who are therefore trained and ready to come into it in the future. What's been interesting, General Patrick Sanders used to be a 4-star general in our army, passionately against conscription until a year after he'd left. He's now a passionate advocate for it.
What changed?
Because in the military, you want to be a professional. It doesn't suit you. From a whole of society perspective, he now sees the tremendous value of it. And that's the dichotomy here, is that the war fighters don't necessarily want it, but actually from the politicians and the whole of society approach, he can now see the benefit.
If only someone could have done something about it when they were in charge, eh? Quentin, to you, just tell me, from a young person's perspective, do you worry this is leading up to bringing in conscription in Germany via the back door?
Probably. We have to be honest about that. And this is basically what they're telling is if we won't get enough volunteers, we will have to start thinking about a duty in 2027. And I'm guessing this is going to be what's happening. But just because we just talked about responsibility for our country and are you able to create this national identity so that everybody wants to defend this country? I think I can speak for millions of young Germans that want to be part of this society and want to defend it as well. So either way, we have so many different problems that the elderly generation has put out in front of us, and we have no other option than solving them. So this isn't the issue. It's just a matter of respect and a matter of clever thinking from the government that they should include us in the process of getting us to the military, and of course invest in us in the first place.
Thanks, Quentin. Walter, to you, some people perhaps outside of Europe will be looking at this and seeing German military expansion, German army numbers going up, and they might have little alarm bells ringing. What do you say to that concern?
Well, the times are completely different now, and the numbers are still, if the government succeeds in its aims, the numbers will still be much lower than they were during the Cold War. And we have a new threat from the eastern flank of Europe again, and to, well, not so significantly, but increase the numbers enough to be able to, well, provide our share in common NATO plans is just something, well, that makes sense and that shouldn't be worrisome to anybody.
And Walter, can I just ask you as well, it was 14 years ago, Angela Merkel got rid of compulsory military service in Germany. How was that viewed at the time, you know, when it happened in 2011?
And that was viewed as something that needed to be done because there was no justice in drafting people to the military. Everybody had to undergo some medical treatment and some assessment center. And then only about a third or half of a class of a year were drafted into the military because they didn't need numbers. So there was conscription on paper, but the reality looked quite different. And well, at the time, people were saying, well, we're just getting the situation straight now. We're more honest with the young people. We need to remodel the Bundeswehr to be an intervention army, to carry out missions in Africa, in Afghanistan, or wherever needed on the Balkans. And you cannot do that with a conscription army. We need to have professionals like, for example, the UK has. And therefore, this is the only logical step. That was the thinking at the time.
Sean, I notice adverts in the UK for the British Army, the Royal Navy, and apart from the work and the kind of adrenaline rush of what guys and girls do in the military, there's a big emphasis on camaraderie, the fun outside of the job, playing football, going to exotic places. I guess these adverts are very well thought through, aren't they?
I think it's one of the challenges. If you have a professional military, which we enjoy in this country at the moment, it is about investing in people. I was very struck that, the view about this is about investing in our 18-year-olds, absolutely right. And a professional military not only provides a work, but provides a family framework. It provides leadership. And actually, for a lot of our military, particularly in the army, some of the people that come in are from broken backgrounds or whatever. They provide a structure and organization for them. And there are some tremendous courses and leadership training that sets people up. There are a lot of people work in the city who used to work in the British Army who have used those skills to great effect. I do think, therefore, but you have to have properly motivated people in order to capitalize on that. And you are in a bit of a race against other recruiting, and we are looking for high quality talent. I think particularly the one thing I would also say is that unlike in Europe, where you need armies because you've got big land borders, in this country, we have a bit of a moat surrounding us, and therefore
manage that at the moment.
Well, that is true.
That's another story.
But air and maritime tends to be more of a focus of that because traditionally, historically, it's been a bit more difficult for people to get across that belt of water if we were being attacked.
Christina?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, to all of you, this will seem like blue sky thinking, but I do find it objectionable the way that military advertising. So yes, it's going to offer these people all these things that they don't already have. But the reason that these people don't have these things is because of failures that already exist by the state. Coming from a broken background, coming from a background of severe deprivation, those are things that the state can do more to fix. So to say we're going to give you something that we could have given you anyway seems quite troubling to me.
Thanks, Christina. Quentin, to you, you heard what Sean just said about life in the military. It teaches you skills, leadership, camaraderie. You make friends for life and you can go on to another career afterwards. Did he sell a job in the army or a role in the military to you?
Well, and when there's a duty to go to war, I'm not going to reject it. I will serve my country with the weapon, or when there's a duty to go to the Bundeswehr, at least. But I think we're forgetting behind this whole debate that young people, not just in Germany but all around the globe, are not doing well. And of course, you can stick your hand out and raise the driver's license, as Boris Pistorius, our Secretary of Defense, did, and say, okay, you're going to have it easier to get your driver's license if you list up. But this shouldn't be the aim of the government. The government should look for structurally supporting young people. And as I said, young people all around the globe are not doing well. There's a serious increase of depression rates. There's a serious increase of anxiety, of eating disorders, and all sorts of things that are troubling young people, and you have to deal with them instead of just saying, okay, the military is such a great place. And I'm not even doubting that. I just want to put forward that young people are not doing well, and we have to address that as well, because you want good soldiers, you want soldiers that are doing well, and not just people that are not interested in joining the military but have to do so because there has been a duty.
Walter, do you hear everything Quentin's saying there? Do you accept he has a point?
I absolutely accept he has a point. I think, of course, young people have had to cope with a lot during their upbringing, like COVID, like migration crisis, floods in Germany. There's been a lot during their life. It's been much less comfortable than the times when I grew up. And I think demanding this is, of course, something to add on top of those difficult circumstances, and I absolutely recognize that. The other thing is, well, would we really want to send the message to Russia that, we just can't manage to raise the numbers to defend ourselves? I think it's absolutely the right message to say, well, we have something that is a good offer to young people, something that can be fun, that can be useful during their later lives, and at the same time sending a message that, yes, we are ready when needed.
Thanks, Walter. Sean, to you, I get the impression this is a conversation that many European countries are going to have in the coming years.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's because at one stage, I absolutely recognise the discussion here. That it's about people and it's about nations. But like all these things, it's not a black and white argument. It is shifts. And I think we've gone from the last 35 years where We've enjoyed the peace dividend. There's been much more security, less an emphasis on the military, and therefore we've invested less in the military. A harsh reality with Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the continued war there has raised the prospect of war on our European continent for the first time in ages. And that will not be something you can fix by turning a money tap on and in a year, 2 years. I've seen some estimates that talk about 50 years before we get back to the level of capability. I do think, though, one of the points which I think is germane to this, the number of times I get asked that the youth of today, they're rubbish, they've sit at their computers all day, they'll never. That is trollop for the whole, ever since history. And there's always been a view that the youngsters, there was a peace ballot between the two world wars. Nobody wanted to go to war on the European continent. Within a few years, we were back and World War II was there. I accept nobody wants to go to war, but you have to prepare for the worst. And the most effective way of doing that is investment in defense. That's what Germany's doing. And it's looking at what's the best model, not for getting soldiers on the front line, but to raising society's awareness and closing the gap between the military and the society they serve. At the moment, they're a tiny myopic group. I do think there needs to be a greater understanding of that role.
Thanks, Sean. One final point to Quentin. Quentin, on a personal level, how will you fill in that form? What will you do?
As I said, I will enlist as soon as there's a duty to do so. I will not go anywhere else than the Bundeswehr if I'm pressured to do so. But I will fight for young people. And I think this is something that doesn't just count for Germany, that counts for so many young people all around the globe. Tell everybody we want to be respected. And at the end of the day, we are going to solve all the issues an elder generation has presented us. So we are always already in the position to take responsibility. But please support us in taking these big tasks. We are going to solve your problems.
We wish you well, Quentin. Thank you to Walter, Christina and Sean Bell as well. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Just search for Roundtable TRT World. But for now, from me, Enda Brady, and all the team here, goodbye and thank you for watching.